So this is determining metrics of successful AV and learning spaces. That's a big gold title there. We are the AV SuperFriends. Quick introductions. Larry Darling, Justin Rexing, who is he's having some sort of knee problems here. My name is Chris Decter, Mark Kolowazinski, and Jamie Reinhart, and we are all going to kind of chunk this presentation out. This will generate a lot of questions, that sort of thing, but we're going to plow through this, and we definitely want to talk with you afterwards about this stuff. So, all right. So first of all, oh, I missed that slide. Let's read this slide again. So, first of all, I'm sorry we have to crush your dreams. You are not going to get a list of like the top 5 things you have to do in your next classroom space. This isn't that sort of presentation. The goal of the session is not to give you how to do, like give you a list of the metrics that you need to measure. The goal of this session is to talk through the process of how to make your own metrics. So we'll get into different types of metrics and things like that, but fundamentally, this is a thinking session for you. So as we're talking through this, hopefully you're taking notes and things for yourself on how you might apply this for your spaces at your campus. So, all right, we're going to focus on the why, not the how. We're going to talk about why we measure things, how, the purpose of doing that, not the physical how we're building and designing and that sort of thing. So this is a holistic look at evaluating on the most neutral way possible our learning spaces. All right. See, I'm missing stuff on my slides here. So this is not how we do AV, this is why we do AV. So the ultimate purpose here is to be able to score our learning spaces in such a way to identify whether or not they are successful and what that means to you, which is going to be different for you at your campus, for me at my campus, and from the rest of us. Keep in mind, although this is kind of a technology-focused conference and a technology-focused presentation, technology is only one aspect of what we're talking about. In fact, when we give kind of an example of the one that we as a group came up with, you'll see that technology is one of 6 or 7 things. We're going to discuss the educational experience in a learning space using AV technology because that's definitely part of learning spaces, but it is not the only aspect to it. And finally, this last one is very important. We are willing to be wrong about this. We're willing to adjust along the way. We want your feedback. And so if this is one of those things where we're not saying this is an end-all, be-all, print this out, and you are done forever. This is a start of a conversation and a process. So, okay, so metrics of successful AV. Why do we need this? Well, first of all, we're spending money. So are we spending institutional resources, money? Are we spending money the right way? Are we doing things the right way? Are we being, what are you looking at? Oh, I thought you were looking, sorry. Are we doing things correctly? And at some point, your boss or your boss's boss or your boss's boss's boss is going to ask, why do you do things the way you do things? And hopefully, if have you gone through this process, you will have an answer for them, aside from, I know how this works. Why do we put this size screen in? Why do we put that model projector? Why do we put so many speakers? We have math behind a lot of this, but that's just telling us how to provide the best, coverage of things or the best size image. But why are we putting in a projector or two? Or why are we, so take a step back from the technology and think more fundamental. Also, don't confuse metrics of success with metrics of, got this backward. Don't confuse metrics of service with metrics of success. By which some people will start talking about metrics of service, they mean, what's the uptime been? How many tickets have we received? How many training sessions did we do last semester? That's not what we're talking about here. And I'm not saying that that's not important. That is one thing to definitely track and keep track of those things, but that's not really what we're getting at here fundamentally, okay? So we want to think more about like the holistics of why we're building and how we design learning spaces and things. All right, anybody used any of these? The EDUCAUSE learning space rating system. In fact, I know Dan Case just presented on this morning, so also, Indiana University developed their own Mosaic certification. So there's other ones out there. You can certainly use these as models. The Mosaic one, and Larry, correct me on this, I believe is specific to active learning. That's its goal, is active learning spaces?
It is, but they used it to grade spaces to see whether or not they qualify.
Right, so yeah, so bit of background on that one. So the Mosaic program at Indiana University is a, and I don't have the web address here, but Google Indiana Mosaic, you'll find it. Was one of, they found a lot of departments were labeling things as active learning even though they really weren't, and they weren't meeting the necessary criteria for what's an active learning space, and so they came up with their own system to determine whether or not something would qualify as an active learning space. Did it meet all the needs of the teaching and learning that goes on in that space to be active learning? So that's where that came from. The EDUCAUSE learning space rating system was up to now version, someone correct me on this, version 3, version 4, somewhere like that? Yeah. It's very detailed, very holistic. It's a great one to look at as a model. I'm not saying, we're not going to use that one today. We're going to talk about building your own, but you can pull things from that. You can get other ideas because, hey, steal stuff from other people. All right, let's talk about what is a metric. A metric must be measurable and quantifiable. So there's a couple different kinds we're talking about. Binary metrics, does it do this or not? Yes or no, easy peasy. So that's easy. Or do we have some sort of graded, some sort of, like a Likert scale of metrics? Does this do it well? Does it do it okay? 1 through 5 sort of thing. By the way, when you're ever doing this, did anyone know this? Don't ever use odd numbers of things because people always naturally gravitate towards the middle. So if you give them 1 through 4, they have to choose, is it a 2 or a 3? Oh, I don't know, and they really have to make a decision. If you say 1 through 5, they'll be like, it's a 3. Does that really help? So think about that when you're putting those together. All right, and finally, sometimes you learn more from failure than from successes. So sometimes take a risk on things, try something out, build a sandbox space or try some new technologies, try some new approaches to things in a new space. You may learn a lot from that. Bring faculty and work with your teaching and learning center, bring in actual teachers and students to go through some of this stuff. You may get way more information out of that than trying kind of like a slight variation of the same thing you've been doing for 10 years. And this is important. An AV system can be perfect on paper and just be terrible in a learning space. And sometimes you don't know that until you've tried that in a real space with real people, or an entire building of them. So it's the same sort of thing. Anybody who really gets into like balancing audio systems, you'll go in and you're the only one in a room and you get it dialed in, then you fill that room with people and it's a completely different space and everything you did was all for naught. So same idea with a learning space. You design the most detailed, most perfect system you've ever come up with, then you go put it in a room and find out it sucks. So, but that's valuable learning information. So don't build a building, maybe build one or try out some stuff. Work with your teaching and learning center, maybe come up with like a kind of a sandbox space. So, all right, Jamie, I believe, right? Who's doing this one?
Yep.
Tools?
It's me.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of today is to develop that tool set and that idea and that thinking. And in fact, we do have a worksheet and some examples that we're going to work through towards the end. So we're kind of rushing up front so that we have more time to dig into the worksheet and some examples that we have. And we want you to be able to start thinking about creating your own process. How many of you are actually the AV installers, the technicians? Yeah? And how many of you are teaching and learning, instructional design, actual instructors, right? And so it's different. And every space that we create, right, how do we evaluate that? It's, as to Chris's point, it's not necessarily, you got projector, screen, picture, done. No, it's how did it help her teach, right? And so we want to give you a way to help start creating those metrics and creating the processes to develop and identify your own individuals. So as I said, as we go, we have a worksheet and some other stuff. Oh, look at that. Focus on your tasks. It would be wonderful if we could create a metric for every single learning modality. Sometimes we don't get a chance to do that. It doesn't scale. Sometimes we do, especially in a building-wide system, right? What do we got next? Developing the tools to start the process. Click.
You just want all the stuff up there?
I think I've already covered it, yeah. Look at that. And then also, as with any metric, with any grading rubric, whoops, that didn't work. Retool, start again. It's a collaborative effort, and which is the thing. It's a collaborative effort. We have to work together. Who's next? The whole is greater than the sum of its part.
That's a famous quote.
I can't say the name. I'm terrible.
Aristotle?
I thought.
No?
Like, seriously?
No, I can't say that name. Oh, wait, who was it? Ben Franklin? No.
Abe Lincoln.
Oh, it was Abe Lincoln.
No. ChatGPT.
We looked that up.
Yeah. Yep, it's me. So we've already talked about how we're not looking to build successful AV systems or technology systems. we're looking at successful learning outcomes and how can we build spaces that provide the opportunity for that. And the key is there's multiple pillars that go into that. We came up with 7 of them real quick. You want to click through? So we have pedagogy. I can't say the other word. You can?
Andragogy?
Andragogy.
Explain the difference.
I'm not going to. We have infrastructure. We have ergonomics and accessibility. We have technology, training, and support. You know, our department might be responsible for a couple of those, but all of those cover a wide breadth of knowledge and expertise. We're not going to be able to do all of that. There's one more. There's also scalability. Scalability is another pillar we add to this, but the key is this really dives into the others. I can't have a scalable solution if the support isn't there, if the training isn't there, if everything else isn't there. So the key is, like, if you're looking for the scalable product to roll out across campus, you have to have everything else in place first. So, who owns all the pillars? If you're asking the question, the answer is probably not you. So, you know, how do I measure pedagogy? You don't. You find a partner on campus, whether it's your learning center or every school calls it something different. You find experts in those fields at your university and you partner with them. You get the conversation going. You bring them along. Because you can only answer the part of this worksheet we're going to go through that deals with your aspect of the learning space. And if you're designing something without them at the table, you're probably doing it wrong. You know, you're taking the easy way out, designing what you've already always designed, or going with your idea, and you might end up with a good AV system and a bad one.
The simple IT system.
Yeah.
Just bang it out, right? All right, let's unpack this a little bit. Let's go through a scenario, and then Mark's going to walk us through the worksheet, which is way too advanced for me. So, next slide, please. Clicky click. All right, so review the mission statement or a vision statement, right? So some of you might have a hard time reading this, so I'll read it out loud. So what is your mission statement? If you don't have one, make it up. For example, I'm going to go through this and kind of talk about what we did recently. Our mission statement to develop Zoom rooms was to replace our old ITV rooms where you have a room in one city talking to your main campus, right? So we still do that for, I don't know why we still do that, but that's a different conversation. Anyways, so identify the charge that fulfills the mission statement. So we didn't want to keep spending all this money on these expensive codecs. We had to find a cheaper solution. So we had to have it automatically scheduled, which was the key thing. It has to kick off and connect to each other automatically, that ITV model. So we decided on Zoomers. Ensure it is alignment with the mission statement. That is what our mission statement was. We were going to replace that experience from VTC type models down to Zoomers. Clicky click. Define the desired teaching and learning experience. Click. Be as specific as possible when you're going through this, right? What is that teaching and learning experience? I want a room full of students to not have a teacher in it. I want them to maybe press a button and have the camera zoom in on them, maybe not. That's really stupid and expensive nowadays. But you're going to have a couple cameras, you're going to have some microphones. You want this certain, very specific experience for your students and your faculty for this mission charge. Determine possible solutions to provide that experience. Click. Confirm the solution generates the specific experience, right? So if you're going to develop something, you're not just going to throw it out there and hope it works. We're going to have to revisit it, test it, make sure it's actually working for what your needs are. Number 5, select the tools and the stuff to enable that solution. Going back to what we were talking about, what cameras, what microphones, what technology, what infrastructure do you need to make this happen? Ensure specific tools fulfills parts, the solutions, and the scope.
I want to jump in here real quick
Yep.
and point out that most of us, we start at point 5.
5, yeah.
This is where we start our process, we've ignored the first 4. Now, we may say, oh, we're just building a classroom or whatever, but it's just to show that this is, in our scenario, and the ones that we came up with, this is almost like towards the end. There's a lot of stuff we should have done before that, I'll be honest, I don't always do.
Yeah,
I'm
if
as,
you're
I'm as guilty as anybody, but we
Yeah.
definitely should be doing, except for Todd, he's awesome. We should be doing this all the way through and involving these other groups. All right, go ahead, Justin.
My full-time job at WKU is a system design engineer, right? So Chris is 100% correct. I think about the technology last. I first are presented with the problem, I'm listening, hearing what the solutions are, and then I go back and do my research, right? So that's all the way at number 5. So what's number 6? Deploy the tools. So we selected our tools, we procured them, now we have to deploy them. Integration, programming, commissioning. Did you use the correct tools? Going back and retesting, right? Making sure that you get feedback from faculty in your test system that you're deploying.
And this might be where most people identify themselves, right here. My
Validate
team goes
the
out and puts that in there.
process in reverse with clients. Explain that, Mark.
So I'm gonna go back to the one to deploy the tools.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
I had that identity. Like, what's your job? Well, I put technology in rooms. I deploy it, right? And it's like, well, how do you know you're successful? Well, it's in there.
It didn't drop. It didn't
must-
kill anybody.
I must be done. I turned it on. I walked away, right? And this is where we challenge kind of the identity. What does that look like? You know, are you sure you actually did the right thing? How did you do it, right? And so, that's kind of the takeaway of all these pieces is that we hang out down here far too much. Do we know how what we're doing rolls up into the larger mission of our organizations? Because it's easy to say, yeah, I chose some stuff, I bolted it to a wall, I'm done with my job. Instructor comes in, I don't know how this works, I'm using my laptop, screw it. So yeah, you may think you're successful, but at the end of time, you're actually doing harm to the academic mission of the university, right? So how do we validate that now? What does that actually look like? And so I think that's kind of how, when we started out down this path to kind of, we know we were doing this, but what does it actually look like? What's up? Your question?
Catchbox.
He's in the back. He's taking notes. Larry's back there taking notes.
He's just doing work.
There he is.
Oh, talking box.
Man, take some money.
What is happening? I just want
We're throwing money at you, man.
And so we're going to get to like some of the actual pieces of this, where this turns
yeah,
into
yeah.
numbers. So if that's what you're actually, okay.
That's a microphone too.
Yeah, yeah.
what?
Talk-
It is. Oh, that's rad. Okay. No, I meant more like if multiple people at the institution have the job that is like step 1, 2, and 3, and then the next person's job is like step 4, 5, and 6. How do we make sure that they are doing this as a holistic approach?
That's that challenge. That's that communication and
exactly.
relationship part of this. Yeah.
Right, and you're not going to do every single piece of everybody's job, and that's not what we're asking for. It's that understand that you should not be the one who's kind of trying to solve all these things. Know what you know, and know that's not my domain. Who should be at this table to actually identify and assess if the overall thing we're trying to do is successful or not, right? And so it sounds nebulous and odd, for sure, and because, again, we're hanging out in that bottom layer, deploying tools, but what does it actually mean to the larger mission, right? And I think as we kind of go through the real life version of this, we'll kind of flesh that out a little bit and kind of see what that looks like.
I just brought this back up.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, sometimes it's identifying who it is, right? Who's your Center for Teaching and Learning? You know, they should have a conversation with them about pedagogy. You know, what do instructors want? Because I would bet dollars to donuts, instructors are not saying, oh, I want new projectors every 4 years. That's not something that they're asking for. They don't care, right? And they just say, I want to see my stuff on this screen so that somebody in the back of the room can actually read it.
And some of this even goes into facilities, architecture, right? Great, we have an awesome system, we have a class, but the room sucks, right? Or furniture. You don't have any control over any of that. But if you bring something like this product to the table and you say, hey, look, who can we talk to about this? Or what is our mission? And the simplest one is we're here to enable teaching and learning. Done, easy. How does this help enable great teaching and learning? And that's the simplest mission statement you can come up with, even if your school has one of the most convoluted things ever, like mine does.
Throw it at 'em. What is going on out here?
So I bring up those questions sometimes with my supervisor. I live at the Convergence, and my team, like, I've always been doing the traditional, like, classroom AV support, and now I work on a team that also does the traditional, like, desktop support, and so I have a supervisor who's comes from the desktop support angle and doesn't know a lot about the classroom support. And so oftentimes he's in those meetings now where, where there's classroom questions and he just he doesn't know. And so, even though I'm not at the top end of the pillar, I ask him a lot of those questions. I'm not expecting those answers, but I'm like, I know you don't know, but now you know what to ask. So when you're in the room, you're better informed. So
It's
enjoy,
better to
have
be
luck.
clear and transparent. Like, hey, this is not my expertise. And identify that somebody else on campus does this. Are they at the table or not? If they're not, who do we have to talk to get them there? So,
It's okay to say, I don't know.
yeah, you don't have to know. You should not feel like you have to shoulder all these things, right? And that's kind of the leadership weird opportunity of this is like we don't see these things in our PDs, but yet we feel like we're here trying to save the day, just deploying tools. And it's like, well, how do we know we're right? How do we know we're actually doing the right thing? And so, do you guys want to jump into a sample scenario?
Let's go back through. Let's make sure we hit all this. So validate the process in reverse with clients. Does faculty and student feedback bear out that they use the tools, right? So think about that, science experiment back in elementary school where you're trying something and you have to retest it, and if it didn't work, you have to go back to the lab and do it again. That's what we're talking about here. Because until you get the buy-in for who you're designing these systems for and who, the systems that you're putting them in, unless you get the buy-in from the faculty, you're probably not successful if you're not getting good feedback. And students, of course, too, yeah. That's the most important thing.
Sometimes they don't align.
It's hard to get student feedback, too, depending on culture and how you're set up. So.
Do any of you ever do kind of surveys about your systems you deploy in a space?
Yep.
That's something I think we all need to be better with, actually getting that feedback and be willing to be
We're
wrong.
terrible at it. I mean, it's bad. Like, we're awful at it.
Sometimes the feedback is easy as going in there and saying, does this work?
In the middle class.
Like, how's it working for you?
So my question is, how do you guys go about soliciting that feedback in a way that people want to give that feedback?
There's various ways. That's a great
Often
question.
they only want to give feedback when there's a problem, and that's good to know, but it's not necessarily helpful in a planning area.
100% correct. So my experience with this, I started asking some questions in the past couple of years about feedback and trying to get student feedback, particularly because, like faculty, we definitely hear their feedback when something goes wrong.
Student feedback's hard to get. There's legal pieces
Yeah.
around that a lot of times. You
So
can't
we
just go
start
out and ask
asking
them
questions
students.
to faculty, and faculty start telling us, well, we already have surveys for students at the end of every semester. You already do that? Well, yeah, duh. Like, well, holy crap. Can we add some questions to that about classrooms? Yeah, done. It's literally, like, you might be sitting there thinking, how the hell am I going to do this by myself? How am I going to go create the student? It was already done for us. We just had to figure out that it was already out there.
And that's probably when you start looking at that pedagogy, the CTL group, they're already embedded with those faculty. And those faculty are having the conversations with those students. So that's your opportunity to go make a contact with somebody maybe you're not working with day in and day out because you are dependent upon one another.
So
right?
to answer your question, like somebody's probably serving these students somewhere, like jump on that bandwagon instead of recreating the wheel. Go ahead.
But even with faculty, it's sometimes very difficult when they're very busy to get good feedback on what they're wanting to do or what's working well versus not working too well until there's an actual problem.
Well, I'll tell you the answer to that. All you got to do is email them in the summer, and they'll email you back the next day.
No,
Every time.
No, they will not.
that is a lie, sir.
So,
And they're definitely not doing anything for the university either.
so one of the ways that I've actually been able to get some of the feedback is I just walk around. I hit the classrooms before class, after class, and if there's students already sitting in there waiting for their class to start, I'll just make up a reason to go in there and check the lectern or something and just start asking questions. What do you think about all this? What do you like about this? And just get that feedback right then and there. I mean, it's not always the best feedback, but...
Be
and-
careful with that.
Oh.
Make sure you don't have like a meeting in 15 minutes that you're going after. If you get the wrong person with the wrong questions,
Right.
be there for 2 hours.
Yes, I have run into those issues too, so. But yeah, that's one of the ways I've been able to get some of the feedback.
In-person feedback, informal feedback.
Student workers work for that well, too, especially if you develop a good relationship with them. Yeah, you can quiz them on the clock and they can't run away.
All right, well, let's jump through a sample scenario so we can kind of look at this, practice a little bit, and then after this sample scenario, we're going to kind of, that's plenty big, you guys can read that, right? And so
Yeah.
I'm going to read through this, and then we're going to kind of take this and say, well, how do I turn this into a measurable number? And we do have these documents available on our website as well. We will give them available, so you do not have to actually use this to reference this in the future. I mean, I can't even read it, so. So the sample scenario we had, we're going to kind of go through each one of these blocks and let you know kind of some of the language. How does this look? Like, where are we at in this? And we actually struggled as a group kind of coming to this conclusion on this one. So we used a real-life problem that I'm currently undergoing right now. And so our sample scenario that we used is, for a new building, launch a pilot to determine the feasibility of using a vendor kit room system as the ecosystem to provide modern environment for teaching and learning. That sounds like a mouthful, right? That's like, can you try to use some Teams or Zoom rooms in a teaching and learning space? Right? Can you use this as a replacement for all of your stack? Is it possible?
Can it be deployed in a full new building as the teaching technology?
And I will be honest, I'm being asked this exact question right now. Right?
And we laughed.
And yes, and I get flack for it a lot. So, what was our mission statement? The mission statement, the language around this was invest in our physical and digital learning environments to enable new instructional paradigms and follow the university to reach new to allow the university to reach new learner populations, right? Sounds like a little bit of like gobbledygook kind of mission statement language. It's not stuff, right? It's not that. It's like we have some people that are going to be here. They're going to be remote. How do we engage them? It's rolling up. It's that top the layer. It's that real frothy piece at the top, right? And so block 1, identify that. Block 2, identify the charge that fulfills that mission statement. Well, what are we doing? We're exploring opportunities to provide simplified, streamlined teaching and learning capabilities for both online and in-room learners. We're starting to narrow it down, right? We're simplifying things. Can we use this? We haven't said Zoom, Teams, Google, or anything of that yet. We were not there. We have not gone down the finding the stuff road.
Yeah.
For you, yes.
There's no mention of any specifics.
Right.
There's no technology yet, no pedagogy,
Nope.
no methodology, nothing.
Right.
Right now we're at the administrative fluff. This is what they want to see.
Right. It sounds
C-suites.
wild, I know, but this is how it rolls up, right? And so we get into block 3. That's when things are going to start to make a little more sense. You're going to hear terms that maybe you're more familiar with, right? You need to see, hear, interact, manage students who are both remote and local via a singular platform. We're starting to narrow in how we're going to assess what the things may be. At this point, you could actually start to go on the floor and start having some conversations with some people, because I need to be able to do these things, right? So I'm looking for stuff that allows me to facilitate this kind of thing, right? As we kind of further down our journey here, now we're going to really start to determine, and that last one, defining desired teaching and learning experience. Now we're determining possible solutions to provide that experience. So we've used that, the desired experience. Now we're going to use this. And so in this example, an educational delivery platform offering a user-friendly interface with a high-quality audio and video conferencing capabilities, seamless file sharing, robust integration with campus LMS for enterprise IT management. It includes robust support capabilities, centrally managed and scheduled security updates, strict adherence to industry standards and best practices. It aligns with traditional campus teaching and learning space automation systems and ensures cost-effective delivery compared to conventional AV classroom solutions. For administrators and institutional leadership, it provides valuable insights through data usage, metrics, and universal scheduling capabilities. That's kind of all the weird things we really want to be able to do with this now, right? So if we can do these, then we have identified potential options that we can start to explore. Right? Now we've gotten to the part where we all hang out all the time. Surfing the internet, trying to find stuff, right? What are we doing?
Cool stuff.
Cool stuff.
Not
Whiz
so
bang,
cool
the
stuff.
shiny stuff. Certified stuff, all that stuff that we've gotten down here, but we can explain this, how we did it. This is why we chose this stuff. It allowed us to do these things all the way along. So we're building up. We approach it backwards, but you should be able to stack this as you kind of go up.
Hey, can I expand on that just a little bit?
No. Yes, go.
Sometimes, I don't care. Shut up. But to that point, honestly, in some of these cases, you've already been told what you're going to use, right? You never get to choose whether you're Canvas or Blackboard. And so even though it is step 4 or 5, right, you can still go backwards and say, oh, okay, well, how can I make this fit into the things above? So it's always double checking each other.
Yeah, and you can kind of, if you have questions, refer to the one above. Does it do this? Does it not do this? And so you should be able to kind of go back and forth and keep answering that question, checking with yourself. So when we get into that block 5, selecting the tools, the stuff to enable that, this is where you're going to make some choices. You know, you can start to determine which ones you're going to evaluate. What are these platforms going to be? You know, platform-specific room-based or room kit systems based on new, all-inclusive kits, or add-on equipment integrated into an existing system with the goal of a single platform for 80% of the common spaces. Now we're starting to say, okay, we're going to take a Teams or Zoom kit. We're going to try to put this in a standard space. What does that mean? We know we have to do all these pieces. Can you look at the data sheet from that product and start checking off those boxes? Does it do this stuff, right? Yes or no? It's kind of like that RFP process you're going to go through. Think of it as the RFP process of your classroom. Can you do these things? How are you going to grade that? Then we get to the fun part, the things we actually do the best. Deploy the tools, right? So this instance, in a new building, we're going to deploy these in 25 classrooms, ranging in size from 20 seats to 250 seats. All learning spaces provide the standard experience, based heavily on our existing standard type. We're not going to get into the room type system for this conversation right now. This is we're calling type 3 room systems with necessary hardware to make a room system. Don't even go there. Don't even do it. Trying to build it into our standard configuration. Take those things and start to actually deploy them. This is the action plan we kind of go through. So when your leadership says, well, why did you choose that thing, that platform?
You did.
Yeah, right. You can walk through this based on this, the highest level, all the way through. This is how we came to that decision. This is your paper trail on your decision making, right? This is how we got there.
Yeah, and I think this is also how you can also start having that little bit of pushback too. Mm-hmm. Like, look, this is our mission statement, and usually it's the mission statement somebody else wrote. Like, aha, this is yours.
This is the real polite technical way to get, it can go terribly. Go do it. And if it doesn't work, you can say, well, here's why it didn't work, right? It's documented. Right, it's documented. Yeah. And we're going to get to some of the pieces now. What are the questions we have to start getting into this validation process? Because I think everybody here probably wants to know, well, that's all great and good, but how do I get to a number, right? How do I get to a yes, no, a binary number so I can actually provide that information to leadership? Because that's what they want to know. They said, hey, go try this. And I said, okay. Did it work? No. Right? And they go, oh, well, why not? Let's talk about it, right? And so we'll go to the next slide. I'm going to jump into some of those questions. Yeah. Okay. Oh, do you have another piece you want to add to that, Chris? Okay. So we have a laundry list of questions, but this is more to get you thinking about what types of things you should ask when we're into this process. We did a couple snapshots of like 20 pages of questions that we had for clients, right? Was the general teaching and learning experience better than the classrooms in other buildings? What does that mean? Yes or no? 0 or 1, right? You can start to ask these questions. If it was worse, 0. Was it better? 1. Measure that, right? Was it easy to access necessary options for user interface and teaching lectern? The stuff here, was it easy to navigate? Yes or no? Probably you don't want to ask like, oh, how was the color? How was like that stuff's, try to keep it very yes or no binary when you're making these questions, right? Add any of that? Good? Okay. Was the quality of audio and video conferencing better than that in the other buildings, right? If they're using these platforms, maybe you're in a 3-2-3 environment. Sorry if you still are, but is this better or worse than that? Are you using some other platform? How does it actually look? And people will tell you, oh, it worked great, but it wasn't as good as Google Chat or whatever it may have been. Like, they will be honest. Yeah, I don't know.
It's all there.
It's real. Like, so, yeah. And then you can ask them to elaborate there. What was different about that? How did it look? And you're looking at the clients for this kind of direct feedback. And take these and make them yes or no and grade them as 0 or 1. Make your list, because now you actually have that number in your hand, right? And so let's go to the next version. Leadership and admin. This is the best one, right? These are conversations you always want to have with your leadership.
This is the I told you so without saying I told you so.
Right. So in your thing, lower cost traditional AV classrooms or not, right? You can take a system and drop it in the middle of something. Just because that piece was cheaper doesn't mean that your whole system was cheaper. We may be adding extra widgets and tchotchkes to actually make that work to deliver that piece. Total cost, right? Yep. So if there's pieces you're not able to do now, if this thing's heavily reliant upon IT and policy, are you the person that can even do that, right? A lot of these room systems require tenant level access. Do your common AV deployment staff have access to that? Yes or no? Right? And so,
Explain tenant level access.
Todd, you want to explain that?
It's basically back-end management, something similar to like what you would probably have in like Zoom, if you're doing Zoom rooms, or your client, you have your back-end admin
Right.
panel piece where you're doing the overall.
So in our version of this right now, we're exploring Teams rooms, right? You get the box, it's flashed, has the OS, you have a touch panel, wedge it in your switching system, go ahead, put it in there. To apply the licenses, who's doing that? Somebody has to have elevated permissions to actually do that at the higher level of your Microsoft tenant, your actual account that's there, and most likely it is not going to be your AV technicians with that level of credential, right?
But you're the one tasked with inserting this into the AV system.
So you can get that out. Like, did you have access to all the administrative tools to do this? Yes or no? No equals 0, 1 equals yes, right? So understand how to actually get that data. Because again, they can say we're doing this, and you say, well, I can't. Well, why not? Because I can't access the system. I'm not allowed to, right? Are we increasing technology debt? That one's real interesting. There's a lot of conversation around technology debt on campus right now. Just because you can do something, should you do it? And what does it mean 5 years from now, right? Just we're going to put it out there. Is it going to last 5 years? Is it going to last only 2 years? It may be cheaper today, but if I have to do this every 2 years, is it cheaper than the traditional system? Yes or no? Right?
This is where like the room certified thing comes in. Will this piece of equipment be certified in 2 years? Am I going to have to replace it?
Uh-oh.
And that licensing fee, like, if we do not maintain that licensing fee, does that mean the room is no longer operational? That's what the technology debt really refers to, is to keep this room working. These are monies we have to pay every year.
Right.
Well, I was going to say, with that, how exactly do you know how long a specific piece of equipment is going to last? Like, what dictates that? Like, where do you get the research for that?
Right. And so we have traditionally had some expectations when we choose solutions, right? We say, okay, we want to have 5, 7. There's different cadence. Larry, you used a model. Where'd you go? Here you are.
Yeah.
It was like 2 computer cycles at one point.
I have my PCs on a 4-year replacement cycle, and my rooms were on an 8-year replacement cycle.
And that's this is the traditional method
Right.
now.
That's traditional. Which is weird.
You don't count.
We don't get any of that. And so every culture is going to have a little bit different expectation around what they want to see for their larger systems, right? And so on average, I think we boil it down to around 7 years for the traditional model. If we're going to go with like this room-based scenario, all of a sudden to make it work, it's only going to last 3.5 years. Well, it may look cheaper, but if it's twice as often now, is it really cheaper?
And what we've seen in the last few years where this has really come on Zoom rooms and Teams rooms, what's really happened is that the certification process, the licensing is outside of any of our control. And that's usually included in some random update from the company. And so now it's questionable unless you have a tie-in with Microsoft. And if you do, we'd all like to know.
Yeah. And how that ties into the technology debt, too, is like in our last session, I talked a little bit about Zero Trust. Well, when Zero Trust hit, I had a large expense out of my budget put toward upgrading rooms. And so I had to move a replacement cycle back a year. If I had the technology debt, that money's already tied up. I don't have those funds available anymore.
So the IT AV support side, right? We live here. This is kind of what we're doing day in day out. We start with that first question, well, can you do this? Yes, you can physically do it. There's no question you all can go out and put these things in rooms and hook them up. I mean, with a proper skill set, you can do that. But now we start getting here, does the room system require retooling of your support process? So again, going back to access, can you see your data? Can you see your stuff? If you're part of a different platform, does your common staff have access to that? Yes or no? Again, if they do, put a 1 there. If they don't, put a 0 there. Does the room system require retraining staff, like your actual faculty and stuff like that? If it requires that, make sure you have a way to say this is why we're weighting it that way. Does it report to existing dashboards? Who has access to that stuff, right? So these are just some examples. We're not saying this is a definitive list, but
You
just
should
to
see the
start
list.
think about it. Like, how can you actually create these questions that you can answer and put a number next to them, so that when you're sitting in that moment and then your leadership says, well, can you do it, yes or no? You can say, well, physically, yes, but here's why we can't readily do it and scale these things. We had that scale piece of that. If we can't scale because one of these things is a 0, then should we even be spending time doing this? Right? Asking ourselves those hard questions. And so recognize we're about at the quarter till piece of this. Are there existing questions? We do have example of these on our website. You can go here and download these documents if you want to cheat those and use those. Feel free. Interact with us. Let us know. We tried to create this to help people get to that so they're not in these situations where they're having a hard time explaining success or not.
And keep in mind that this was just one of the 7 pillars
Right.
of was our deployment successful? Did we deploy a successful teaching and learning space? We just talked about the gadgets, the widgets. We didn't actually talk about the pedagogy.
Right.
We didn't talk about any of that other stuff, the architecture. So metrics of success. Some of it you can control, some of it you can't. And you know, if you really need to dig into it, have the same solution from the different departments.
Correct.
Give them the worksheet and work through it from their view, from your view, from somebody else's view. You might find out you're the only naysayer. Well, now I got to do it, right?
You do it, right.
Or you might find out all 7 of you go, this is a really dumb idea. And you're all going to have to do it anyway.
Yeah. Right. But at least you have a receipt. Right, here it is.
You had
we
the
did
I
it.
told you so. I'm
Yeah.
good at these, the I told you so's.
All right.
Please refer to my email when I told you that this was a dumb idea. And then I'll be looking for all of you for a job. Any questions? What we got? Participate. There's $50 in it for you. Well, fake
Not you,
money.
Raul. Do you have an announcement? No. Okay.
Anybody? Any questions? Any expanding? Any tell us we're stupid? We really like
Yeah,
that,
bring it.
actually.
We're okay with that. Where do you buy a Catchbox, Larry?
You took a lot of pictures.
Okay, hopefully I didn't miss the obvious, but AV SuperFriends, you guys have had great presentation. I'm just wondering,
You said
what
something.
are the AV, like, where are you, like, are you a team from various colleges or like a
Spread across the country.
Okay.
I don't have a mic, so if you want to do it.
I didn't hear the question, so here.
Who are they you have taught? We are spread across the country. I'm from Greensboro, Kentucky, Missouri,
Right here.
right here, and he changes every couple of months, so I won't tell you where he's from right now.
Currently housed in Wyoming.
Yeah, we have a podcast. We do 3 times a month. We're kicking out some more, and then we go to things like this and talk. We're basically just a bunch of higher ed AV geeks who.
Nerds. Nerds who meet up at lunch hours and record things.
Yeah.
Real quick, so where this started was, I think, and Chris has better history and memory than I do, but I think you all, yeah, so 5 Infocoms ago. 5 years ago, we all kind of met up at Infocom. We just started talking. Pandemic hit. We started, because we missed each other so much, we met on Zoom once a week. And then we started recording our meetings. And we're like, dang, like some of this stuff we're talking about is like really useful. Like I'm getting a lot of value in my job from these discussions. So then we're like, let's just record the discussions and push them out. Oh, well, that's called a podcast. So we just like gathering with you all and talking about higher education technology, and we like your feedback. Email us. If you want to talk about something or disagree with something that you hear us about, we'll bring you on the show and we can talk it out. We like to solve problems.
Or make problems.
And we like to argue with each other a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how we came about. It was an accident.
Oh. Don't you have a mic over here with all this gear?
You can't see him. He's invisible.
That's it, you're fired.
So I will say, from a student's point of view, when it comes to getting feedback, the students do have a lot to say and a lot that they want others to know about their classrooms. They know that they have classrooms that they like. They have classrooms that they don't like. They like it when they like the big auditoriums and multiple projectors. They like smaller classrooms where there's one big projector. They do have thoughts and opinions and stuff that they do and don't like, but as a student, there are limited options to say that.
Right. No, and again, what are we doing here? Really, it's as much as we want to like make sure faculty are able to do what they're doing. Fundamentally, without the students, none of this stuff's going to work. It's not going to matter, right? So if they have opinions, make sure that we're actually listening to them, because they can vote with their feet. They can go wherever they want to go. Absolutely. And they are aware of it, and they know they are digitally savvy. They know what their cost to be here is. Many of them have every single month planned out for the next 5 years. They know exactly where they're going to be.
And to go off of that, I've had classmates that some of them use Rate My Professor to find what instructors. I've had a few of them that will go into the classes and see what classes are being taught in, because they have buildings that they do not like. They have buildings that they do like.
Right, and so what we do, it has an impact out there. You are literally keeping the lifeblood of your universities going. Are you providing a quality experience for your students and your faculty? If not, they will go somewhere where they can get that quality experience. They're going to vote with their feet and vote with their dollars. And that's when you hear the existential threat to higher education, there it is, right? They can go wherever they want to go, and they will. Yep, so. Yep, yeah, all students are there for hire. They will go, and they will travel. So, and in today's teaching and learning, it's easier to learn online and understand that what we do in this space, it's a bit of an arms race. Doesn't mean you have to go out and spend the world to do it successfully, but be very intentional as to why you are doing the things you are doing in your spaces. Chris, final words?
No.
There it is.